Alright, so if you're thinking of buying a property in Japan, in particular in a ski town, this video is going to walk you through everything you need to know before you start diving in and buying a place in Japan. So first things first, yes, anyone can buy a property in Japan. It's fairly straightforward. Buying the house is actually probably the easiest part. Everything else after that has its challenges. But yes, anyone can buy and own property freehold within Japan. There are some leasehold lands, but definitely I'd stay away from those. Try and look at the freehold land. There's no restrictions around buying or owning or selling property. You can do it within a company, you can do it within your own name, you can do it in the trust. There's 3 different ways you can do it. But yes, first things first, you can own property in Japan, just like you can back in your home country. Secondly, you probably won't be able to get a loan. This is a big one. You know, traditionally, if you're buying a property within Australia, New Zealand, or wherever you may be from, usually 9 times out of 10 you get a loan. Australia, you can't really do that, especially you can't get a loan within Japan. So if you're looking at buying a place in Japan, get your finance organised before you come to Japan, maybe, you know, or be a cash buyer basically. You might be able to withdraw equity from your home back in Australia or New Zealand or wherever you may be from in order to finance the costs of buying the property within Japan. The real work starts after you buy the property. Okay, so buying the place is fairly straightforward, you know, nothing too complicated there. Everything tricky becomes after that, like setting up the utility bills, you know, getting insurance, navigating a lot of the banking systems and things is quite tricky, especially depending on your visa status. 9 times out of 10 you'll probably be on a tourist visa, so you can't open a bank account. And owning a vehicle is quite a tricky thing, especially if you don't have a company or anything established in Japan. You can't just buy a vehicle, put it in your own name as you can in most other countries, so that's another thing you've got to be mindful of as well. Also, don't fall into this cheap house trap. I've seen a lot of people buying a cheap house. There's a lot of videos on the internet about it. You know, you can buy a house for 20 grand or 50 grand or whatever it might be, which all sounds great. Oh, lives a nice dream. Which sometimes there are some cheap houses that are still in pretty good shape, but there is a lot that aren't in good shape, and then you end up having to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to get them up to somewhere where you want to live or spend your holidays or whatever it may be. So don't just fall into that, you know, oh, it's a cheap house, you know. Buy smart, not cheap. That's probably the best word of advice around that. Also, a lot of people might not be 100% aware how much snow Japan gets, especially if you're living in pure traditional snow country, you know, Niseko, Hakuba, Myoko, Madarao, Nozawa. Any of these regions, they get a lot of snow. So dealing with snow is a big job. Just, you know, you might be working with machinery and things you're not familiar with, bulldozers and snow blowers and all these sorts of bits and pieces. So become familiar with that, how they work, how they, you know, things you can sort of figure out with them. They do tend to break down a little bit, especially the older snow blowers. I myself have spent a lot of time fixing snow blowers over the years, so I'm quite handy with fixing snow blowers now. But that's just due to my own having to figure it out as I go, because I wasn't even too sure who to ring when my snowblower broke down. Spend a bit of money on a good snowblower if you can, if you're needing to clear around your house, which 9 times out of 10 you probably will. You get a lot of snow collect on the roof, slides either side of the property. You'll need to clear around that. Sometimes in your entranceway, off the back. Sometimes you have to work in conjunction with your neighbours. It's a bit of a team effort clearing snow in Japan, so definitely another thing to consider. That's a big one actually, on the neighbours. Meeting the neighbours in Japan is super important, a lot more important than I would say in Australia or New Zealand or wherever else. You know, it doesn't have to be a big formal thing. Just go next door, say hello, maybe even take a little present from home, a packet of Tim Tams or something, I don't know, just to introduce yourself. Even if you're just doing very broken Japanese, it goes a long way, especially if your neighbours are Japanese. It's honestly, I think we've done it with all our places, and we were told that that's just the custom, so that's just what we did, and I think it goes a long way. We've had some very lovely neighbours, which we're so grateful for over the years. It have made our life so much easier, especially in our little rural town of Myoko. Yeah, it's been an absolute dream, some of our neighbours. Also, another big one is know your purpose before you buy. Okay, so you know, is it a holiday home? Is this something you want to have as a short-term rental? Do you want to live here long-term? If so, then you're going to have to look into the visa status, because this is a tricky one, even for ourselves. We're currently on a business manager's visa. It's only good for 1 year, so you have to keep renewing it every year. I think eventually we'll try and get on a 3 or a 5 year sort of a visa, but at the moment we're just on a 1 year visa. So that's another thing you've got to factor in. As a tourist, you can stay 90 days on that tourist visa, so most countries are eligible for that. And then you can spend probably, let's say, 6 months of the year there on that tourist visa. You'd have to come and go a little bit on that, but that's another thing you sort of got to factor in as well, what your intended purpose for buying the property is. Okay, so there's different areas in Japan, some very well-known ones. If you're looking at buying property, I'm sure you've heard of Niseko and Hakuba. those ones are definitely well and truly on the international map, let's say. And in these towns, you're going to be paying a premium. But generally, you might be buying houses that are a lot more modern, built for those sort of environments. A lot of these older houses you'll see are not double glazed, no insulation. They're quite old buildings. A lot of these new builds are fantastic, especially in Niseko and Hakuba, but you're going to be paying an absolute premium, or prices what you'd pay back home in Australia for a property there. You're not going to be buying these $20,000 properties in Niseko. Well, if you are, well done. There's very few of those. They're as rare as hen's teeth. Also, if you did want to sort of branch out a little bit, there's plenty of opportunity, especially I feel in and around Myoko, Madarao, even Nagano. There's some nice cheaper properties. Still, ideally you need to be on the ground doing the work, doing the research. You're not going to be able to research this online that well. There is a website called At Home, which is definitely worth checking out. I'll leave a link in the description for that one. It's fairly easy to navigate. There's good Google Translate on that, so you can sort of look at a few different places on there, start getting in touch with agents. And that's probably a good place to start. If you're looking at these more, less known sort of resorts, I wouldn't say Myoko is not that. Myoko is definitely on the radar now, but it's still not quite as hectic as Niseko and Hakuba. Last thing that you sort of need to be mindful of as well is if you do buy a property that does require some renovation work, trades are quite hard to find, especially in rural Japan. I mean, if you're, like I said, in Niseko and Hakuba, it's probably a bit more, but especially our little town in Myoko, trying to find good trades is very hard. A lot of one-man bands sort of shop, one or two, electricians, one or two plumbers, these sort of things. There's not that many around, and they're all getting on in age. They'll all be 60, 70 years of age. And a lot of the sort of recommendation, they won't want to take on your work. They haven't heard of you before and these sort of things. So, yeah, that's another thing that can make it a bit tricky if there is a bit of work that's required on the property. Unless you're chippy back home and that, then okay, you can do some of your own work over there, which is great. There are some new rules and regulations that have come in about renovating in Japan, which have only just sort of come out in the last month or two, which I'm not super familiar with, but there is rules and regulations around earthquake prevention and all these sort of different things. So you'll need to sort of look, and what's classed as a major renovation or minor renovation. It doesn't seem like there's clear-cut guidelines on this yet, well, not that I'm aware of. So that's another thing to sort of be mindful of as well. So yes, final thoughts to wrap it up. 100% easy to buy the property in Japan. Like I said, there is a few niggly things that come with buying a property in Japan. If you are looking, is it a more of like a holiday hopper, sort of property, or you just want to be out there for a month or two during the winter season, I'd be favouring something that's definitely more modern or new, let's say, off the plan even to a certain extent, if there's some of those options around, and where everything's snow cleared and managed for you. If you're wanting to spend more time in Japan, spend half the year, then yeah, definitely look at maybe some of these older style homes, or jumping into a big project like that, which is great. That's what we do, but we do spend a lot of time in Japan and do a lot of the work ourselves, which makes it, I wouldn't say easy, but makes it a bit more manageable because we're there on the ground trying to do it. It's very hard to try to do this from afar, manage big sort of renovation projects. Even in the country, it's still a little bit tricky trying to manage it whilst you're there. Anyway, that's it for now. If there's anything you want me to unpack a bit further, definitely drop it in the comments and I'll make a follow-up video.